second. Yes, here you are. So hello everyone, welcome. My name is Florinda Wolf, and I'm a program associate at the Joint Learning Initiative on Faith and Local Communities. I have the pleasure today to welcome you all to this webinar on the evaluation results and learning from the Scaling Up Faith Leaders Engagement to Prevent and Response to Violence Against Women and Girls program in Liberia. This webinar is co-organized by GLI, but as well by Episcopal Relief and Development and the Episcopal Church of Liberia Relief and Development. I will just quickly start by giving you a brief overview of today's agenda, and then I will let my colleague speak. So this webinar will start with an introduction by Dr. Chiseche Mibenge, who is the Director of Gender Initiative at Episcopal Relief and Development. It will be followed by a presentation of the project by Annette Musu, the Episcopal Church of Liberia Relief and Development Director. She unfortunately can't be here with us today, but she has recorded a video message we will show you later. After that, Dr. Lisa Leroux from Stellenbosch University will present the evaluation findings, and then Ernest Cajust, the Senior Program Officer at ERD, will share stories from his visit of the program just right before COVID hit. Then we have Oppo Siswan, who is a project manager of child protection and women empowerment at the International Network of Engaged Buddhists, or INEB. She will share what resonated with her from the presentation and how INEB works on preventing and addressing GBV. So she will give us her perspective from another context. Finally, we will have a Q&A sessions where you will have the chance to ask your questions, but also share your own experience about today's topic. But if you have any question during the presentation, please feel free to write them in the chat. I will now hand over to you, Chiseche. The floor is yours. You're on mute. You're still on mute. We can't hear you.
Please excuse me. Thank you.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I've made please give me 1 second while I reopen my Word document. Thank you so much for your patience. All right, good morning, friends. Thank you so much for that introduction and for sharing this platform at JLI with us. So again, my name is Dr. Chiseche Mibenge. I'm a human rights lawyer and an educator. I joined the Board of Episcopal Relief and Development in 2017, and in 2019, I joined Episcopal Relief and Development as a full-time member of staff as their first ever director for gender initiatives. And all I'll do this morning is share a few words about our work at Episcopal Relief and Development, particularly our work for gender equity and women's empowerment. And then I will provide a little bit of context and objectives of our dialogue today, and then I'll pass it on to our very, very distinguished and very learned panelists and moderator. And I'll be moderating the question and answer session as well. Episcopal Relief and Development is known to many of you. We are members of JLI, and I've shared a link with our bio on the JLI website in chat. But we are an international relief and development agency of the Episcopal Church. We're headquartered in New York City, and we have a regional office in Accra in Ghana. We work with local Anglican Communion, ecumenical partners, and other local organizations to transform lives and empower communities in 4 core program areas. And these are promoting early childhood development, gender equity and women's empowerment, climate resilience, and disaster response. Our gender portfolio, which I support and lead, includes a partnership with, for example, the Episcopal Diocese of Honduras. We work for Project Siloé, and we partner with the Siloé project in Honduras to uphold the dignity of marginalized people, such as commercial sex workers, LGBTQ plus people, people living in slums, incarcerated people, and ethnic minority communities. With the Diocese of Burundi, and I can see our colleagues from Burundi are here today. Welcome, bienvenue. The Diocese of Burundi, we work with the Service Anglican pour le Développement Communautaire, the Anglican Church of Burundi. And in Burundi, we have an integrated response that engages populations that are the most vulnerable to violence. And we work very deeply on a climate resilience program that includes community-led reforestation, literacy, savings groups, positive health outcomes, and integrating ending gender-based violence into all of that work. I'll just say for all of you here, please reach out to me if you'll be at Women Deliver in Kigali, in Rwanda. We'll be there with our partners in Burundi, with our partners working to end gender-based violence in Aru and Bukavu in DR Congo, and with our partners in Liberia. We'll be there as sponsors and in a pre-conference faith-based event, and as panelists in a side and parallel event. So please let us know if you'll be there, if we can meet in person and perhaps collaborate. And so we're here today focusing on our interfaith program. Our interfaith program in Liberia is a cooperation between the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women, UNTF, Islamic Relief, USA, and Episcopal Church of Liberia Relief and Development, the ECLRD. The program, in short, you'll hear much more about it from the panelists, trains Muslim and Christian faith leaders and community leaders, local authorities, school leaders, youth, and school children to speak out against violence and harmful cultural and faith-based norms and provide access to services to survivors of violence. In my Episcopal news stream this morning, there was a report that our presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church, the Most Reverend Michael Curry, he was in Buffalo, and he was in Buffalo at the Beyond Hate panel discussion. And they were focused on having conversation about racism and how Buffalo has started its healing process in the years since, you know, the mass shooting, the killings that occurred there. And he said, love begins with truth telling. It always begins with truth telling, and healing begins with truth telling. Another anniversary, Mother's Day, that is 3-4 years ago, the Poor People's Campaign was launched on Mother's Day. And their message this weekend was also about truth. And they say we must tell the truth more about poverty, about inequality, about gender inequality, about violence, about economic dysfunctions and inequality. And Episcopal Relief and Development defines ourselves as faith-based and evidence-driven. Right. So the truth, the evidence, what is the evidence of our work, of our claims that faith is the transformative element, that faith-based leaders can be the agents of positive change. In fall 2020, Episcopal Relief and Development and World Vision USA, we co-facilitated a panel at USAID's first summit on strategic religious engagement. World Vision was represented by their JESI director, Dr. Jackie Ogega, and she drew on programs from Nepal, from Bangladesh, and she produced the evidence, right? What is the truth about faith-based engagement in responding to, ending, preventing gender-based violence? And I spoke about our Liberia program. I spoke about an evaluation, which Lisa LaRue, who's here today, was very central in that first evaluation we did in Liberia. And I spoke about the evidence that we were beginning to extract from our work in Liberia. And since that USAID conference, the Religious Summit, my work, my team's work, has been really to continue the critical discussion around the evidence, the truth of the work that we all do in development and in relief and in development. And today's objective is really to do that, to really present the best of that, to present the findings of the end-line evaluation at this webinar, and to focus on the results and the learnings. And we have here Liz Leroux, Ernest Cajuste, our Chief of Party for the Liberia program, who'll speak, and Annette Musu, who is absent but will share the video, who'll share and bring the truth, the evidence to us today. So I hand over to our panelists. And before I do so, if I can just say 3 quick words of thanks. One, internally, to my colleague, Chu Nuon, who often operates in the background, but is really the backbone as our senior manager for program knowledge for impact, the backbone to really capturing the truth, the evidence, the data, the facts as part of our MEL team. So thank you, Chu, for all the support that you've given us and for bringing us here today with Ernest, and to Ernest, our Chief of Party for Liberia, for bringing us here as well. Thank you also to the UN Trust Fund and Violence Against Women, and to Islamic Relief USA, and to the EU and the UN Spotlight Initiative. That was a grant that we received in the midst of COVID, and emergency grants that helped us to extend our program and to capacity build during the emergency. I'll pass it on now to our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. It was very beautiful to hear about the project. I will now share the video Annette recorded for us. She will share what the text Annette is saying. I think should be good now.
Florine, I think you have to keep yourself unmuted.
Like that? Let me restart then, sorry.
Episcopal Church of Liberia and JLR J16 2016. The Episcopal Church of Liberia Relief and Development is a program of the Episcopal Church of Liberia. The ECL works in vulnerable, impoverished, and hard-to-reach communities as part of the ECL outreach. Our program focuses on women's economic empowerment geared towards improving the social and economic wealth and livelihoods, and addressing sexual and gender-based violence against women. In order to achieve this, ECL adopted the faith-based approach, wherein this program interventions engage with Muslim and Christian clerics, lay leaders, women, men, and over the years, with financial assistance from the United Nations Trust Fund and Islamic Relief USA, in collaboration with the Episcopal Relief and Development, the project engaging faith-based organizations to prevent and respond to violence against girls and increase survivors' access to services. An interfaith behavior change intervention was initially implemented in 2 counties, Rankin-Mount and Process, from 2015 to 2017, and later expanded to 2 additional counties, Wong and Wednesday, after the project ended, and having had the expanded program scaling up faith leaders' engagement to prevent and respond to violence against women was a key project that started. The Explainer program was implemented in 40 districts and with the core project. The project goal was for 28,298 individuals to experience less intimate partner and non-partner violence, targeted 2 new forms of violence. Specifically, 1, intimate partner violence, example, physical, sexual, and psychological abuse, and 2, sexual violence by non-partners, and for survivors to receive support and service.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I see a lot of comments about the audio quality. Sorry about that, but Chu has shared the text in the chat, so you can all get back to it. I will now hand over to Lisa, who will present the evaluation findings. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be with you today. And unfortunately, my colleague, Julienne Corbos, who conducted the baseline and endline evaluation with me, she is just doing crazy travel at the moment. So she doesn't have a stable enough internet connection to be able to join us today. But it is my privilege to share with you some of the learnings that emerged from the study. So I work at Stellenbosch University, so Julienne and I are independent consultants that came in to conduct the baseline research in 2019. And then now in end of last year, October and November of last year, the endline research to accompany this intervention. And it was for us a great pleasure to do so. So lovely to work with everyone there. And I'm going to try and give you in about 20 minutes an overview of key findings. But please, there is a full report that's available to everyone, and there's a summary report. So please feel free to go and look at those to get a bit more depth and texture to what I'll be sharing today. So with the inline evaluation, it consisted of mixed methods quasi-experimental design, and we used 2 different approaches. So different approaches for different types of beneficiary groups. And with both the baseline and the inline, we did mixed methods approach. So we had quantitative and qualitative data that we integrated. And then with the endline especially, we gathered additional qualitative data to respond to overarching evaluation questions and objectives. So 4 key methods that we used. So there was, at the endline, there was a desk review and secondary analysis of project data. So that was reviewing monitoring data and the quarterly and annual reports and any additional studies that were conducted during the project. Then, in terms of quantitative methods, these comprised of surveys with 2 different groups and 2 different kinds of surveys, one with congregants and then one with faith leaders, youth and student leaders, and youth group members. So with the congregant group, the achieved inline sample was 735 in the intervention group and 729 in the comparison group. And then with the faith leaders and the youth and school leaders and the youth group members, the inline sample replicated as closely as possible the baseline sample for each type of group. So that included the gender of the respondents, and with the inline achieved sample was 388. Then in terms of qualitative work, we did focus groups. So with faith leaders, with youth leaders, with adult congregants, with boy and girl congregants, savings with education group leaders and savings with education group members, and with ECLRD staff. And there was a randomized sampling of the focus group participants, and a total of 18 focus groups were conducted with 129 participants in total. And then we also did key informant interviews. So these were with ECLRD and ERD staff members, with national and district stakeholders and partners, involved in project implementation, and with the interviews. Purposive sampling was done, and we did a total of 16 interviews. So next slide, please. So there you have a bit of background around the methodology. Again, if you're interested in more detail, please use the reports. So if we look at the project's effectiveness in terms of achieving its intended goals and outcomes and outputs, the survey data shows us that the project results, you can go back, yes, just let us stay there, please, that the project's results were achieved to a medium level overall. So we have clear evidence of improvements in behaviors, knowledge, and attitudes being associated with intervention exposure. And then we see that the intervention appears to have been effective in reducing women's experience of intimate partner violence and of non-partner sexual violence. Then there are some significant association between this reduction in violence and exposure to various intervention activities. So these activities include participating in faith-based activities where violence against women and girls was discussed, or having seen pharma cards, and I'll speak more about pharma cards in a bit. However, we don't see a corresponding decrease in men's perpetration of violence. That wasn't observed, but this may be linked to men's social desirability bias at baseline, so that they underreported perpetration at baseline. Okay, so maybe something to flag now before I go into more detail. Something that we did struggle with in analyzing the survey data is that there was sometimes like really wide variations in the extent to which results were achieved across the counties. Now, there's several possible explanations for this, and I'll kind of watch the time. And if there's time, I'll go into more detail at the end. But one possible and probable reason is that our comparison county, Margibi, ended up not being such a great fit, because unexpectedly a large number of violence against women and girls prevention and response programs ended up being implemented there by other organizations. Like I said, unexpectedly during the project period. So an ideal comparison group would have been a county where there were no violence interventions happening. But of course, we can't control what happens in Margibi. Next slide, please. Fortunately, we did not only collect quantitative data, but also qualitative data. So we did focus groups and we did key informant interviews. And this really allowed us to explore more the texture of what the surveys were finding. And it gave us, I would say, a different kind of understanding of how the project intervention had been experienced in the different counties. Now, across the board, the qualitative data supports this perception that violence against women and girls has decreased due to the intervention. So in all three of the counties that we sampled, and particularly in Riverside, there was a very, very strong perception that intimate partner violence has decreased substantially as a result of the project. Not eradicated totally, but really a feeling that it's so much less, and especially physical intimate partner violence, with fewer husbands being seen and reported to beat their wives, especially. And the awareness raising that has been conducted through the intervention and through the intervention volunteers and faith leaders' use of the pharma cards to facilitate these dialogues in community spaces and between community members about violence and gender equality. These were really singled out as being instrumental in driving the change. So it was not just awareness raising in terms of saying violence is wrong, but really these dialogues and inclusive conversation. So the link between the reduction in IPV, in intimate partner violence, and the use of the pharma cards or engagement with faith activities that link was also found in the survey data. Next slide, please. Now, early marriage was raised by a number of participants who suggested that it had decreased in their community, largely as a result of the work done by the project, again, including the farmer cards. Now, I keep talking about the farmer cards. So the farmer cards are picture cards, big picture posters that were designed with by ECLD, but with faith partners to represent typical Liberian situations where violence is being perpetrated. For example, a picture of a teacher inappropriately engaging with a pupil, or child marriage, a situation inferring child marriage, and the viewers, the participants in the group, would be led in discussing what they're seeing. Are they seeing this in their communities? And at the back of the card, the facilitator would have questions that he or she could ask to help this conversation. So these farmer cards really repeatedly came up as being instrumental and really important tool in having people not only recognize the inequality and violence in their community and in their own relationships, but really connect to it as not being something out there, but something in their communities and often in their own lives. Now, early marriage was one of the issues raised. And like I said, really the perception that early marriage had reduced due to the project's intervention. And these findings were reflected in the inline survey as well, with 70% of faith, youth and school leaders and the youth group members reporting that they believe that early marriage had decreased in their community in the past year, and 67% of congregants in the intervention group reporting that same perception of reduction. It's on the next slide already, sorry. Now, the qualitative data suggests that there have been some significant impacts of the project on gender equality and women's empowerment. So not only on condemning violence, but really engaging with that really hard, tricky space of talking about gender equality and women's empowerment within faith spaces. And those of you who do this kind of work will know that very often it's easy to promote anti-violence messages in faith spaces, but it's not always easy to promote gender equality and women's empowerment messaging in faith spaces. So, as I said, the qualitative data suggests that there have been some significant impacts on gender equality and women's empowerment. And for us, this was most visible in the many reports of women and girls' greater participation in community life, but really including leadership roles, both in school, but also in church and in the general community. So both as faith leaders, as youth leaders, and as community leaders, or other types of leadership roles as well, such as leaders of the savings groups. A large number of qualitative research participants also described changes in the extent to which men supported women in the domestic space. So cooking, cleaning, taking care of children. And you'll see the quotes on the slide. I have so many things that I hope to speak about that I'm not going to be reading out the quotes on the slides, but they relate to what I'm sharing. Now, again, the survey data lends some support to these findings. So 2 items in the survey asked men and boys in a relationship in the past year about their behaviors with female partners, including how often they asked their wife or partner's opinion in the past year, and how often they helped around the house, so including cooking and cleaning, but in the past year. And the frequency in which male congregants engage in these behaviors increased at endline. So all male congregants, but we see that this effect is largely driven by adolescent boys' behaviors. So there was less change among adult men, but a really big change among adolescent boys and their behavior. Next slide, please. Now, in the evaluation, it identified an important, positive, and unintended impact of the project. And that was the bringing together of Christian and Muslim faith leaders and communities, and the strengthening of interfaith collaboration. So this was really fascinating discussions, especially in the focus groups that were mixed faith groups, and how they described a significant shift in interfaith collaboration, where it used to be before the project started being implemented in the community, it used to be that they had very little contact and trust in the past. And not only did that improve, but it moved to the point of joint meetings and discussions, including about violence against women and girls and how to tackle it in the communities. But we even see faith leaders from these different faiths speaking at each other's meetings. So a pastor speaking in the mosque and an imam speaking in the church. So this interfaith preaching was really described in a way that you could see it was experienced as really a highlight and a sign of how interfaith collaboration and trust had dramatically improved. So having these faith leaders from both religions work together and support each other really gave authority and legitimacy to the importance of their messaging, but community-wide. So it also promoted interfaith harmony more generally, and really repeatedly participants would speak about how this was unheard of in the past. So in this way, the intervention had really helped social cohesion in the community in general. And if you take into consideration the civil war past of Liberia, something that can strengthen social cohesion is, I mean, it's a very important and worthwhile and notable unintended impact of the project. Next slide, please. Now, 4 key promising practices emerged for us in the intervention. Now, this interfaith collaboration is one of these promising practices, and I spoke about that. Then farmer cards. They were just repeatedly and unprompted by us discussed as useful and impactful and highly recommended for use in other spaces. So not just this interactive way of doing, but also the fact that those pictures, it looked like Liberian pictures. It looked like Liberian people in Liberian communities with typical Liberian situations. And people could really relate to it. And the participatory conversations that came from those cards was just experienced so positively. People didn't feel like they were being preached at or taught, but kind of felt that they were participating in a guided discussion where they're realizing something they knew anyway, in a positive way. I don't know if I said it that well now. Then third, the role and engagement of faith leaders as key actors and activists in project implementation was identified as an effective approach that should be replicated elsewhere. So participants said, you know, these people have authority, they have platform, and people listen to them. But in involving them, it's so important to engage in a process of discussion and facilitation. So faith leaders are not being attacked and said, you know, this is wrong, you're not interpreting your sacred text correctly. They're not attacked and criticized, but they're accompanied in a journey where they themselves realize that need for personal and community-wide change. And I'm going to speak more about this just now, but this word of journey is very important. It's a process. It's not a 3-day workshop and everything changes. It's a journey. But engaging with faith leaders in this way, it leverages their unique reach, their authority, their influence, their commitment to the community. And it brings a longevity to the project messaging because they stay there. An NGO might leave, but the church, but the mosque, it stays. And then finally, awareness raising about violence against women and girls and gender equality was identified as a key important activity, combined with all the other things, of course, not just saying violence is wrong, but still this awareness raising and the consistent messaging about it was identified as important for over the 4-year period for really helping people commit to this idea of ending violence and promoting equality and women's empowerment. Now, next slide, please. So in a final reflection, and how am I for time? Okay, I'll go fast. In a final reflection in terms of the project, I think it's really important to note that the project received 2 phases of funding. And this longer term funding was experienced as being instrumental to its impact. So before this 4 years, there were another 3 years. So it was a 7 to 8 year intervention phase, although in the second phase, it was scaled and went into other counties as well and more communities. But it's very clear from staff reflections that the phase 1 and the phase 2 are seen as the same cohesive project that build on each other and they strengthen the attainment of the same goals. The term embryotic stage was used by one participant for phase 1. And in this stage, ECLRD had to bring together these different actors. So faith leaders from different faiths, traditional leaders, youth leaders, and start this journey with them around violence and the need for personal and community-wide change and the need to work together. So phase 1 is seen as a phase where there was a lot of resistance to the project's messaging and definitely as the more difficult phase. And in terms of the interfaith collaboration, phase 1 was seen as the foundational phase for forming trust and facilitating that interfaith collaboration. So phase 2, in almost every way, benefited from phase 1. And the way it was described to us, phase 1, towards the end of phase 1, it's like the project messaging, it's like it caught, the interest really started to grow and support for this idea of interfaith collaboration. So phase 2 was able to leverage this interest and support and kind of just go from strength to strength. And it was in phase 2 that communities started taking ownership of it themselves. So staff would explain that during phase 1, they had to do everything. They had to do the training and implement the activities and mentor and support and motivate. Whereas during phase 2, community members, trained faith leaders would train other faith leaders. Community members won't automatically just refer survivors to ECLRD, they'll use the appropriate pathways. So phase 2, just in every way built on phase 1. And there was the strong feeling that the second grant allowed the project to actually reach its proposed aims, which it wouldn't have been able to do in 3 years. And that groundwork that was needed took a long time, almost all of phase 1 to actually implement. Okay, so as I noted at the start of the presentation, so a wide range of positive impacts were identified, looking at the project's results framework. So if we look at the trends in the intervention group, it's evident that women's experience of intimate partner violence and men's IPV perpetration reduced slightly, stayed the same. Attitudes improved across all congregant groups, but particularly among male congregants, and knowledge of violence against women and girls services improved across all congregant groups except outcome level. Except for adult men, sorry. And at outcome level, we see positive impact for almost all the indicators in the results framework. So where there was a reduction in faith leaders speaking out against violence in the last year, there was an increase in other leaders speaking out and congregants having heard faith leaders speak out. And there was also an increase in female congregants' belief that faith leaders are actively working to end violence. But we did find some mixed findings in the results. So for example, a positive impact on overall attitudes was only present amongst adolescent boys, and a positive impact on knowledge of violence against women and girls services was only present amongst adult women. Now, as I explained at the start, these results need to be read through the lens of an imperfect comparison group. And we need to take into account what the qualitative data is showing us as well. Then another puzzling issue was the differing results between the intervention counties, and the trends, we just couldn't always make complete sense of it. So for example, in VAWG County, men's perpetration of IPV increased, and it didn't in the other counties, but we see improvements on almost all of the goal and outcome indicators in VAWG. So we wonder about this, but it can be explained by social desirability bias at baseline. And another key reason why there might be such variation between counties is COVID, and how, while it clearly impacted all of the country, it's possible that it impacted in different ways in different locations. Next slide, please. And now I really will be ending. So overall, the inline evaluation results strongly show us that the fear of change holds, and that the experiential learning and the self-reflection facilitated amongst faith leaders and other leaders that were targeted by the intervention, and their newly developed skills and the use of the platforms that they have to communicate about violence against women and girls have had a positive impact on community members' knowledge, behaviors, and attitudes as related to violence against women and girls. And I think it's really important to end with voices from the community. As you can see on your slide, there is a real appreciation of the intervention. And at the same time, a very strong need was articulated for it to continue, but also to scale to other communities in Liberia as well. And I think, again, this emphasizes the importance of, when we are trying to address violence against women and girls, of designing and implementing longer term interventions. But thank you so much, everyone. It was such a pleasure to do this research and to speak with you about it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing those learning with us. I see we already have questions in the chat. We will take time to answer them at the Q&A part of this webinar. I will now directly hand over to Ernest to share stories from his field visit of the project just before COVID.
Okay, thank you so much, Florian. Hello, everyone. And thank you so much, Lisa, for your work and for such a wonderful evaluation. And I think you really speak to what we've been able to accomplish in Liberia. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure for me to talk about our work and how Episcopal Relief and Development and the Episcopal Church of Liberia, we've been able to engage faith leaders and various actors in the pursuit of true gender equality and the reduction of violence against women and girls. For this presentation, I would like to spend a couple of minutes to briefly tell you about a trip that I took to Liberia between January and February 2020, right before COVID. So this trip was important to me because it was the first time that I traveled to Grand Jade. Next slide, please. To meet with the faith leaders, the youth, the project stakeholders. Grand Jade is one of the 4 counties, along with Grand Cape Mount, Riversest, and Bond County, where this project was being implemented. Grand Jade is located at the southeastern corner of Liberia, bordering Ivory Coast, just about 420 kilometers away from Monrovia, the capital city of Liberia. It took me roughly 11 to 12 hours to make those 420 kilometers. And I was lucky because depending on the weather, people sometimes take days to make it to Grand Jade because of the bad road conditions. During the trip, I took a couple of pictures, and I do have some favorites. And today I'd like to share 4 or 5 with you to illustrate how we partner with and engage religious actors, young people, and other stakeholders to prevent and respond to violence against women and girls. Next slide, please. In this picture, and like I said, those are some of my favorites. I like this picture. As you can see, this group of women, they have their fishing nets. They are getting ready to head out to catch some fish to feed their family. But before going fishing, they took part in one of their regular meetings led by 2 women faith leaders to discuss and explore attitudes towards women living with abusive partners. The faith leaders created this group to organize, listen to, and support other women and girls as they tackle gender inequality in their own communities, and also to unleash their collective power to help one another. During the 1 hour, 1 hour and a half long meeting, the women faith leaders as facilitators presented the story of a fictional couple, Fatou and Jibro. In this particular story, Fatou lives with her husband, Jibro, and their 2 children, a 3-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter. Fatou didn't do much schooling. She only got up to 2nd grade. She's a housewife, but for some time now, she has wanted to leave Jibro because he does not give her any financial support, does not take care of the kids, and does not even let her go out to work because he's very jealous. When he comes home at night, he's always drunk. He insults her, and sometimes he forces her to be intimate with him, even though she doesn't want to. Fatou has tried to talk to him many times, but it's like talking to a wall. He doesn't listen. He doesn't want to listen to a woman. She has put up with this for the last 4 years and hasn't told anybody. She doesn't know what to do. The facilitators divided the group into 4 subgroups, provided the descriptions of how Fatou's story could end, and asked each group to reflect on the story with some key questions to help Fatou deal with the abusive husband, just in the style of the FAMA cards that Lisa was referring to. So there were 4 groups. The first group had to deal with, reflect on whether Fatou decides to leave, to ask for help. Some of the questions that they reflected on were the following. Where does she go to ask for help? What do they say to her? What does she decide to do? Now, another one, what if Fatou decides to leave Jibro? What is going to be the most difficult challenge for her? How will her decision affect the children? And what does she need to succeed on her own? Another one, both Fatou and Jibro, they've always lived in this community, so they know a lot of people. So what if Jibro asks someone to, if Fatou asks someone to talk to Jibro? So who would Jibro talk to? And who would Jibro listen to? And what would this person say to Jibro? And finally, Fatou decides to leave Jibro, but 2 weeks later, she returns to him. So some of the questions that they had to reflect on: what makes Fatou return to Jibro? And how do her family friends react? Do you think this is best for her children? So the group reflected on Fatou's experience and shared their thoughts and ideas on how they believe Fatou's story should end. Almost all of the women either live with a Jibro or know a Jibro in the community. These kinds of groups that have been created in the communities have, they help women and girls to build confidence and self-determination, to create positive social bonds among the women in the community, and provide a platform for discussing issues that they are facing in their community. Next, please. In the second picture, we have two faith leaders, a Muslim woman and a Catholic priest. They are exchanging ideas and thoughts about some of the tools that had been developed to equip faith leaders in order for them to be more effective in speaking out against violence against women and girls in their congregations and communities. This program provides spaces for Muslim and Christian leaders to build mutual respect and understanding, and also to ensure there's unity in the messaging. We hear stories about Muslim, like Lisa told you, of Muslim leaders going to Sunday services and Christian leaders going to Friday prayers in the mosque. I was in Liberia last August, and I heard an imam from Great County invited a Christian woman to speak with the women and girls in his congregation. They are working together. They are united in this fight, and that sends a powerful message to their congregants. And the message is loud and clear. Third picture, please. Yeah. And the third one, I had a meeting with a couple of young people during my trip, and I heard many stories of how the program has helped them to build self-confidence and their leadership skills. These three girls, they are in the school GBV committee in their schools. They've been trained on the school code of conduct and take it upon themselves to teach their peers that it is forbidden for teachers to have any kinds of sexual relationship with any student. They cannot exploit students in exchange for grades, money. They cannot make students work on their farms or run their errands. And they know what to do if they see teachers conduct themselves unprofessionally, or if they breach the school code of conduct. The youth in this project, they use drama, they use sports, they use music, they use radio programs to raise awareness on issues that affects their communities and issues that prevent the advancements of women and girls' rights in their communities. Next, please. The following picture is another special one to me. I have to admit, I didn't take that one. It was shared with me by our partner in Liberia. So as you can see, there are two women. They were on their ways to Grangere, the same county that I visited. Like I said, I was lucky. They were on the way to meet other leaders to strengthen the network. They unfortunately traveled during the rainy season, and I was lucky my trip was during the dry season, so I didn't have to go through that. These women, they are faith leaders, and as you can see, they are on a mission, and nothing can stop them. I like this picture because it helps me to put things into perspective and to really appreciate their dedication, their drive, their grit, and everything that faith leaders are doing to develop, to inspire, to mentor other women and girls, and to create safe spaces for them to thrive in their communities. So when we go on trips like that, I mean, we do get to have some fun. I mean, we do get to sing and dance with the community members. So the next slide, we're gonna see like it's a video of women singing. If you pay close attention, you're gonna hear a baritone voice. That's me in the background. And I was I had the phone, so you're not gonna be seeing me dancing, but if you pay close attention, you will hear me singing in the background. Can you play that, please? Well, I couldn't hear it. I'm sorry, you couldn't hear me singing. But this song, I think it summarizes well what this project is about. They were singing side by side, the women on the right, the men on the left. Together we will walk side by side, side by side. So the goal of this project was really for women and girls to live in violence-free communities where they can easily live up to their dreams and full potentials. For them to live in communities where women like Fatu, in our story, does not have to suffer from physical, sexual, economic, psychological abuse from their partners. It's for men and women in these communities to have respectful relationships. That's the goal we've been able to work towards. And I think, as Lisa clearly explained in the evaluation gives a clear picture that efforts have been made. Efforts of these two women in the mud, it was not in vain. And it's important to continue on the progress made so far, but there's a lot of work still left to be done. And obviously, it does require all hands on deck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ernest, for sharing those beautiful stories with us. It was really powerful. I will now hand over to Opor from INEP, who will share with us what resonated with her from your presentation, Ernest, but also from Lisa's presentation, and how INEB is working toward ending violence against women and girls. Opor, the floor is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is an honor to be here and listen to our colleague presentations. The story of the Ernest just presenting that what he have been and what he and his team have been doing with the community are excellent, and I would like to congratulate all of you on that. I have first heard about the Liberians when I was watching the movie called Pray the Devil Back to Hell. And when you reach out to me and say that, would you like to be part of this? I was like, yes, of course, to learn from the master. So yes, I see that something that jumped out here that I would say that is something that I also will have to learn. Relearn and unlearn. So is the interface collaborations and how you getting into to get the woman, create a safe space for women here. So yeah, I would love to hear more details on that. And I was also looking for the presentation that could that's something the working around the men working with women in the community where that where this intervention will be last long. That's I also raise my questions now. So no, just an excellent, and I can see that these interventions have been carefully implemented, and also to bring a faith leaders and talk about the social norms, cultural norms, and honor them to be a part of these inventions. Is this project and the impact of this project is going to be last long, that I believe, and I have faith. So yes, with the excitement, I forgot to introduce myself. So yes, I was like, yeah, I'm here. So my name is Opor Sisuwan, from International Network of Engaged Buddhists. So our organization based in Bangkok. Though the name of Engaged Buddhists, we also work with others religions and the faith, other faiths. So we also have an interfaith work, and myself start working here and learn about the I network 2.5 years ago. So I came from the background of not very much engaged in religions, but very spiritual. I would claim that. So that's why I bring up the word unlearn and relearn so much and so on, that we are at part of the we contribute to this the gender-based violence and all the social norms, the gender norms that we have heard over time from our parents, from the media. Unfortunately, some of the religious leaders misinterpreted the teachings. So so here I'm also unpacking my learning journey, and as part of this to joining and be able to read the comprehensive evaluations on this. I see a lot of the finding that I know, and I am working for the child protections and the women empowerment project. So I would also take this as my takeaway and my learning. And I'm looking forward to be learning from the project and from the team here. I maybe did not cover everything, but please ask a lot of questions so I can answer. Very excited to be here and honor. And they asked me to comment. What do I say? I would just say, congratulations, you did well. And so for the Buddhist perspective and the work that that we are doing, I am speaking here on the shoulder of many women leaders and those male faith leaders who are supporting this gender equality. And also I'm trying to work on that based on the concept and the word called Kalayana Mitra, meaning that spiritual friends, we don't have to agree on certain things, but there's a core value that that we call upon when it's need be. So through that Kalayana Mitra, I also learned that I'm also biased toward somewhat at the young woman. I do not enjoy going to temple or other religions institutions. So because it has been what I have overheard is always misinterpretations and the oppressions of women and other genders. So here, hearing this work and being honored by the people in community. So there's a hope there for us to really working to unlearn and relearn from each other. So yeah, yes, that's what else can I say? Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Opor. It was really great hearing what resonated from you and in a bit more about Ineb's work. Chisechi, you are now on for the Q&A session.
Thank you so much. Thank you, friends. We have a number of questions that we've already began to gather, and I'll take a round of questions, I think 3 to 5 questions, and allow the panel to respond quickly. And those asking questions, please keep them short as well. So I saw a question from Usman, my brother Usman, in the chat, and he spoke really about the unexpected, as Lisa spoke of the unexpected outcome of faith solidarity, interfaith solidarity. We also heard Ernest talk about social cohesion, deepening relationships between women as well. And his question is, how will we sustain, how do the programs sustain that interfaith collaboration and engagement? And Ernest, perhaps you could speak to the role of the National Faith Leaders Association Council. And are there other groups that grew more cohesive, for example, different tribes, other vulnerable groups? That's one question that Usman posed. There's a contribution around safe spaces. How do we form safe spaces, particularly when we're talking about male engagement? The issue of men and men's transformation, men's behavior change came up a lot, the potential, the challenges. So again, with deepening male engagement, how do we keep spaces safe for men and for women? Are there any thoughts on that from the panel? And then I'd like to invite 2 of our colleagues, Jean-Francois from the Anglican Church of Burundi. I think you have a question for us. I'll invite you to ask a question. And I'll also invite our friend and colleague, Dr. Kolanti from St. John's University, to pose a question. And then with that roundup, we have 4 good questions. We can take some quick responses. Please, Dr. Kolantai, please, Jean-Francois. Dr. Kolantai, I think you're on mute. Do I see you speaking? And then Jean-Francois.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very rich presentation. My question is to do with the evaluation, that there was very little improvement in the attitudes and behavior of adult males. So it seems that more time and effort needs to be given to this work in creating change amongst these men. So did the project identify ways in which religious leaders can facilitate this change?
Thank you. Jean-Francois, please feel free if you are able.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is about the faith leaders of Liberia. Ever had any conflict or any misunderstanding between Muslim and Christians before? Because in our community, even if there is no open conflict, Muslims are taken as a distant religion, a religion which is not to be approached to, not even a mosque. We should not go near the mosque. We should not. So sometimes we fail to collaborate and to act together or to plan together because we fear that his faith may conquer me, or if I'm not conquering. Thank you. Was there always unity?
Thank you very much. And before I allow the panel to respond, I think I can invite our colleague Yeshimebet, only because I see your question is related perhaps to Jean-Francois' question. Yeshimebet, may I ask you to pose your question? I can see your hand is up.
It's about to discuss webinar. Just hi. I'm sorry. Hello.
I can also read it if you cannot speak. Just let me know.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
I'm so sorry for the interruption ahead of my question. It was a wonderful presentation that you have shared to us. Maybe you were
focusing on the Liberia's experience and also some of the impacts received found during the evaluation. Maybe my question focus on two things. One, what effective strategies you found relevant during your evaluation? Because I'm from Norwegian Church Aid in Ethiopia, so I'm a program advisor for gender GBV and SRH. So in our context in Ethiopia, we work with faith-based organizations, and we are effective in working with faith actors. And we have effective strategies that we use for such prevention programs. So can you share with us what strategy or approach you found very relevant or effective in addressing or in preventing violence against women and girls? And inversely, when we see the faith communities, faith institutions, they are not secular, they have their own values, value systems. So how do you approach or how do you value their value system, like their theological perspectives on some of the issues? These are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Please go ahead to the panelists and please try to keep it short. I know people are itching to pose questions.
I can try to address Jean-François and the last speaker.
From Norwegian.
I think in Liberia, even though the Episcopal Church of Liberia Relief and Development is a Christian organization, but we do not impose, anybody to follow our faith, or I mean, like for example, when they have meetings, when there are trainings, you'll have maybe if the training begins with a Christian prayer, it's going to end with a Muslim prayer. There's no judgment. I think what we've been able to do is really to create a safe space where everybody feel comfortable, everybody feel welcome, and no religion we don't consider any religion higher than others. And I think maybe what's another issue is the fact that both the Christian and Muslim, they believe in God. I mean, there's one God. And we work with them to look at the Holy Scriptures and to see stories that they can relate to, stories that they can look at in a different view. So really the work is really to work with them on the theological framework to ensure that they are integrating the Holy Scriptures correctly, because we do have a lot of people that are not doing that. And also really to create a space where everybody, they feel comfortable, everybody, they feel welcome. There's no judgment, all faith are welcome. And I think they feel comfortable to work together like that.
Maybe if I can add on, and if it's okay, and maybe responding to a couple of those questions around the interfaith work. I don't think one should underestimate the uniqueness of Liberia in many ways. So Liberia does have a history of interfaith collaboration. If you look at the history of peace processes in Liberia, interfaith collaboration and mobilization around ending the war was a big thing. So I think a process in a period of time that worked in Liberia will not necessarily work in exactly the same way elsewhere. And I've done research on this in other places as well, so I'm kind of relying on that as well. But if you look at the process in Liberia, their first phase, it was about 3 years of building these relationships and trust, and the manuals that they're using, the pharmacas that they're using were created in these joint interfaith spaces. So they created a long-term journey of collaboration and trust. So Jean-Francois, to respond to what you were describing from Burundi, possibly that's how people went into that first meeting being like, you're not going to convince me to, move over to your faith. But there was a process that was carefully facilitated. And I think, again, time to take that seriously. And then that's links to that, but also Yeshimabet's question around useful strategies. I think something that I know worked in Liberia was the experiential learning. So throughout, not just at the community level, but with faith leaders that became key actors from phase 1 all the way through. It wasn't a training, it was a process of learning with, creating with, conversation with. And I think that type of experiential learning approach rather than a training approach is quite crucial in mobilizing people long-term around an issue. It's difficult to respond so quickly. Just the last thing, Pauline, that you asked around how do you change in men? Our survey results are showing that this is taking longer. So in the report itself, we're not really digging into it because our data didn't dig into that much. I would highlight 2 things. I do think there is a need for gender-specific spaces. So like we would create spaces for women, for safe spaces for women for conversation. And it's so needed. And I think with violence against women and girls, we're very attuned to creating it. I think the same type of approach for men, because these are hard conversations for them. But at the same time, and I think you said it while you asked the question, this will take time. If the status quo is a status quo that privileges you, it will take longer for you to change than it would for a woman who is, suffering under the status quo. Really short answer to say we mustn't be long, so I'm stopping now.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. I did see a question from Opor related to the healing journey. And I'd like to ask you, Ernest, to talk about what healing meant in our program. I didn't mention that Ernest is not only our senior program officer and chief of party for the Liberia project, but he's also our technical expert at Episcopal Relief Development on trauma and resilience, and was very central to expanding our faith leader toolkit to include an entire module, entire chapter on trauma and violence against women and girls. Please go ahead, Ernest.
Well, our faith leaders are trained to listen to these stories and to, with a compassionate ear, and to provide support to guide the survivors as well. Their faith leaders, they're trained on the referral pathway to when a survivor comes to them to know where to refer that survivor, whether the survivor needs to go see, go to the clinic, the health, or the survivor needs to go to the police, the survivor needs to seek justice. So the faith leaders, they accompany the survivors throughout the journey. And the healing process is not just, it's a process. So the faith leaders are trained on the referral pathway to guide the survivors through the process, whether, like I said, going to the health clinic, ensure that their case are taken by the police and investigated, ensure that the case gets to court and they get justice, but also really being able to listen to them, being able to ensure that their whole family, the whole structure, the community rally around them to support them.
Thank you very much, Ernest. Before we go any further, I did have a lot of questions in my DMs about the FAMA toolkit. And if I may, Chu, I'm going to share my screen and give us a quick peek at a FAMA card. And what I'll say about the FAMA cards is I've used the FAMA cards I can't share my screen, at venues such as a church in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I've used the FAMA cards in many venues, and they've been have had very strong, very visceral responses. So if I can share my screen, here we are. A FAMA card, exactly as Lisa described it. It's contextualized. The subject matter is chosen by the community, and the community understands it immediately, what it is, where it is happening. So we have the image, and above the image, you have the facts, the association, the meaning, and you have the euphemism, sex for grades, that is used, right? And that conceals the violence in the image. And through the facilitation of the FAMA card by a trained facilitator, you eventually get to sexual abuse of children, exploitation of children by a person in authority, right? What do you see? Have you seen this before? And whether it's in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, or in Monrovia, or in Cape Mount in Liberia, yes, we have seen it, right? How do you feel about the story? And most importantly, what can you do? Where is the advocacy? Where is the activism? What is the reporting mechanism? This is what the FAMA card is all about, right? We see here sexual abuse of a female child by a pastor. Again, in Wyoming, in Liberia, I've seen strong reflection, strong dialogue that images from the FAMA card elicits in users, right? And things like a celebration, such as a wedding, yeah? Again, everyone knows what's happening, but with clear facilitation, we begin to think about, should a 13-year-old child be prepared for marriage? The dialogue begins. Is this violence? Where is the violence? People are celebrating, the imam, the priest are facilitating. So a quick peek at our FAMA cards. Again, if you'd like to see the fuller FAMA card range, let us know. We're always happy to share them. Now I can see Usman has raised your hand. I'll ask you, Usman, to pose your question. And I will also ask Angela. I know that Lisa responded to a part of your question about how long does the process take to bring in the faith leaders, to prepare them, to train them. If your question was not adequately responded to, or you have another question, please go ahead after Usman.
All right, thank you.
I'll also invite my colleague Dawn to jump in after Angela. Thank you. Go ahead, Usman. Thank you, friend. Usman,
right,
please.
thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, very loud and clear.
Right. Do I have the floor to ask my question?
Yes, you do. Please go ahead. Feel free.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. Let me start by appreciating the presenters. All the presentations were actually wonderfully done, and I learned a lot. So I have this additional questions that I want to ask first, and I mean to both the presenters. Anyone can, respond to the questions. So, was government actually involved? Because in the presentation, I don't know, but I did not hear government, play a role in the whole of the presentation that I had. So at what point was the government involved, if government was involved at all? And was the project, targeted at individual faith leaders or the faith as an institution? That's the second question. And the third question, and the final one, what can you say was the biggest change in behavior that you actually observed? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those three questions. Angela, did you want to add anything to your questions, or were they responded to?
Okay, thank you. I think I just want to make it like sharper, the questions. The project so is the activities in the community run in conjunction with the preparation, or the initial preparation with the faith leaders? And if not, what were the indicators that, you know, what was the measurement that make you decided, oh, these projects is ready to be launched to the community or not? I think that were my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Dawn, my colleague.
Oh, thank you. Just very quickly then, as we come to the end of this very rich webinar, we want to thank Lisa and Julianne for the evaluation. There's a lot of nuances and complexities. As Chu said, we'll be sharing the full evaluation report, and we'll also be sharing in June a summary. So we just really appreciate the opportunity to dialogue with you all, and we look forward to some more exchange of learnings and delving deeper into the relationship between this program's strategies for social and behavior change and improvements in outcomes and progress towards these goals. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ernest, Lisa, did you want to respond and to share any final or closing words?
I feel that Ernest, you know, a lot of the questions posed now, if I look at my frantic notes, is more programmatic. So I feel Ernest, since Annette is now unfortunately not here, should rather respond.
Yeah, Chisachek, would you please remind me at like the first and second?
Yes, of course. I typed in one of the questions from Osman, and that was about distinctions between working with faith leaders versus working with faith institutions. And then at what stage was government involved? Government involved at all, yes.
Well, government, like the very early stage, the government was involved. So we work very closely with the Ministry of Gender, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Justice. We take part in the national task force that involve all those ministries, and at the local level as well. We regularly meet with the government official, and again, we are in the task force at the local level with the government. So the government, we really work hand in hand with the government on this project. So, and this is very, very important for us as well. And regarding working with faith leaders versus institutions, the faith leaders we work with, I mean, they are part of, an institution. So like when we, especially at the national level in Monrovia, the faith leaders that are part of the network, they were referred to us by their institutions. So we work with institutions, and we also, I guess in the day-to-day activities, we work with faith leaders because they are really closer to their communities. There are people that communities rely on, listen to. So yeah, so we work with both the institutions and the individual faith leaders in this work.
Thank you very much. Time is never on our side. And I know some questions were not answered or fully answered. Angela, excuse me. But please know that this is an open, ongoing dialogue. We started it and want to continue with it. We will be at Women Deliver. If you'll be at Women Deliver, please do let us know. We'd love to see you there and to spend time at our booth, working in dialogue. And, we look forward to continue the conversation at JLI. Thank you. Can I pass it on to Florine?
Thank you. And on behalf of JLI, ERD, and ECLRD, thank you to all our speakers and to all of you who joined us today. It was a pleasure to have you. So this concludes the webinar. The recording of the webinar and the evaluation report will be available on our website, and we will send them via email to everyone who had registered. So thank you all for attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this webinar. Thank you.